Welcome to Moving Panels, Ignite the Mic. From Gotham's alleys to galaxy's far, we dive in deep, we set the bar. Debates and takes, we bring the heat. Pull up a chair, join a seat. Moving Panels, where fandom takes flight. We review, discuss, and shed the light. Heroes, villains, every epic night. This is your show, your fandom's might.
Welcome to this Moving Panels one-shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. And before comic books gave us capes, cowls, and billion-dollar cinematic universes, humanity already had superheroes. They just went by different names. They were gods, demigods, kings, monsters. They wielded thunder. They lifted impossible weights. They battled creatures that represented chaos itself. That kind of sounds familiar. Thor wasn't in a crossover event. He wasn't on a team. He was the god of thunder. Hercules wasn't chasing villains and appearing in end credits and never getting seen again. He was completing labors that defined what it meant to suffer and endure. And when you really look at it, we didn't stop telling those stories. We just started printing them in panels and then showing them on the screen. And so today we are talking about mythology in comic books. And I've got a very special co-host with me, someone who genuinely loves mythology. And so that is why I asked her to join me, and that is my wife, Bethany.
Hi.
So let's get into your love for mythology.
Right.
So what first got you interested in mythology?
So when I was in ninth grade, all of my friends had started taking this foreign language class that I had never before been interested in this foreign language in particular. But all my friends did it. And I was like, well, I just want to hang out with my friends. And so I decided that for my foreign language in high school, I would take Latin.
Okay.
And
so many people speak it.
It is a dead language. Nobody speaks it fluently. But I will say, to the credit of Latin, it has taught me how to speak English a little bit better. When I come across words that I might not recognize, I'm able to break them down. I also learned a lot of history and mythology and things like that. And that is what I really loved taking away from that class, was learning about the things that the Romans experienced and their beliefs. And that has just kind of blossomed from there in the shmishma years since I graduated from high school.
I mean, if you asked me, it was Hercules and Xena. That was what got me into mythology.
That is true. I did love Xena, the warrior princess.
So what is it about mythology that keeps you coming back to it?
I mean, it's beautiful stories. I mean, it's these larger than life beings who are so full of themselves that they can't stop making bad decisions.
Yeah.
And they persevere anyways, and they keep pushing through. And it's also fascinating, how people used those stories to explain everyday phenomenon. And that I really loved. The story of Hades and Persephone. The reason we have the seasons is because Hades stole Persephone and keeps her in the underworld for 6 months. And her mother, who is the goddess of grain and things like that, mourns her loss. And that's why it's winter, because she's not actively planting and making things grow. And then when her daughter comes back from the underworld, she rejoices. And that is why we have the spring and the summer.
Yeah.
And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to cover all of that. So let's go ahead and get into just some of the characters that, wear mythology on their sleeve, on their costume, whatever you got there. And we'll start off with the clearest example, and that is Thor.
Right.
Yeah. So
a direct parallel.
Yeah. In Marvel Comics, he's essentially the Norse god pulled straight from mythology. In the original Norse myths, he is the son of Odin. He is the wielder of Mjolnir. He is the god of thunder. And he is the protector of both Asgard and Midgard, which is what they call Earth. But the mythology Thor is a bit different from the superhero version. He's more of a brute force warrior than he is a superhero. Or I guess I should say more of a polished hero.
Right.
He's not as polished as he's presented by in the comics. He represents protection. He represents fertility, the sanctification of Norse culture. And yeah, I mean,
Thor is who you think of when you think of like
Viking,
Norse gods and stuff. He's the first, even before the MCU, and we all became familiar with mythology or Thor.
With Thor, yeah.
Yeah. Before we all became familiar with Thor, when you think of that, you think of the Thor as the god of thunder. And yeah. That's all I knew really about Norse mythology before.
Yeah. That and Thursday is Thor's Day. Yeah. I don't know why, but I do know that Thursday is supposed to be Thor's Day. So yeah, Marvel just keeps the broad strokes, Odin, Loki, Asgard, Ragnarok.
Right.
All of that is from Norse mythology. But yeah, Thor, prime direct example of Norse mythology. Now we can go into Greek mythology, as I talked about earlier, and there is the character of Hercules, straight in the comics. So a direct import. So Heracles, because if you say Greek, it's Heracles. Hercules if you're talking Roman. But of course, everybody knows his 12 labors, of course, his immense strength. But he, like you mentioned, he was very flawed.
Right.
He had a horrible temper.
Let me tell you what, them Greek and Roman gods, they are so flawed.
Yeah, and we know we've all seen the Disney movie. So,
which is very inaccurate.
Yeah. But yeah, so he, in the myth, he's the demigod, the son of Zeus. He did the 12 labors as an act of redemption. But again, deeply flawed, suffering hero, quote unquote.
Right.
And in Marvel Comics, Hercules does retain the strength. He does have the bravado, the big ego.
Right.
Kind of looks at things humorously. His identity as a god trying to live among the mortals. So more like, I guess, Arnold Schwarzenegger's version of Hercules.
Right.
From, those movies. But yeah, the comics often lean into him as more of a charismatic, comedic figure. Again, going into that Kevin Sorbo also, Hercules, the Legendary Journey or whatever. I forgot the full name of it. Yeah. But do you think that Hercules is more interesting, though, as a flawed figure than he is as a comedic, almost heroic character?
I think a character like that has to be flawed. Otherwise, he is... They're all unattainable. They're gods, for crying out loud. They're superheroes. But I feel like because they are already on such a high pedestal, if they don't have flaws, it's hard to see yourself in that character. And I think that's how people connect to characters like that, is by seeing something in them that they see in themselves. And so I think it's more interesting if they're flawed.
Okay. Well, moving on, I think a lot of people, when they think of mythology and they think of Greek mythology, might actually think of Wonder Woman.
That is very accurate.
So, again, she's more inspired by mythology, not a direct adaptation, but deeply tied to Greek mythology. She's the daughter of Hippolyta, who was the queen of the Amazons, and that's from mythology. Yeah. She is... Sometimes, depending on what story you're reading, she's depicted as being created from clay, and then she was
very Athena-like,
and was given life by the gods. More so, like more recently, specifically, she's the daughter of Zeus. She's the daughter of Zeus, and of course, we do see her interact with Ares, and like we did in the movie, and Athena and Hades. So we do see all those Greek gods and mythological characters. Of course, the Amazons themselves are pulled from Greek myth, as we talked about. But Diana's role is not just, as you're kind of getting into, she's not just a part of mythology. She represents the ideals of mythology. You know, the truth, justice, compassion, strength, you know, all of those, like
strategy,
you said, stories that mythology are teaching people.
Right.
So does Wonder Woman feel like she is kind of a modern continuation of those Greek myths?
I think so. She's, like I was saying, she's very Athena-like, who, you know, Athena's intelligent, she's strong, she's the goddess of, like, war strategy. She's a fierce soldier, she's intelligent, and, you know, she's incredible. She's a really interesting god to focus on, but also she has a lot of, like, flaws where she becomes a little too full of herself. She's so amazing. How could anyone not think so? And she punishes those who don't think so and things of that nature. And, but yeah, it's kind of, yes, is my answer to that question. What do you think?
No, I agree. Again, I think, and this is what this whole episode is going to be talking about, is how comic books, and of course now even into the comic book movies and TV shows, you know, have expanded, have modernized, you know, these classic mythological stories.
Well, and then if you could also think about, like, the journey, because, you know, in mythology, it's not just about the gods, it's about the mortals who interact with the gods. And I think about like Odysseus, who fights in the Trojan War for years and then tries to go home and comes across all of these different obstacles before he can finally make it home. And Wonder Woman also kind of goes through that, where she has to leave her home to fight, and she's constantly, like, trying to find peace, find, like, some sort of settle, but she can't. Yeah. Like, she falls in love with a mortal man, but she can't love a mortal man because he's gonna die, and she might. I'm not a Wonder Woman expert, but, you know, you get where I'm going with this. Like, she can never go back. Like, she always has to move forward. She can never go back. Yeah. Even when she goes back, she can't stay back.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually some storylines in which Wonder Woman has, or Diana, I guess I should say, has broken so many of the Amazonian laws and rules that she is not allowed back to Paradise Island, Themyscira, whatever you want to call it. But you brought in about a mortal interacting with the gods, and that brings me to the next person on my list, and that is Billy Batson.
Hey!
Originally known as Captain Marvel, now people know him as Shazam. Do you know what Shazam stands for? It's actually an acronym.
Oh no, I don't know what it stands for. Yeah. Please tell me.
So this is what I guess you could call mythological fusion.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and tell you that so you understand that it's not just one mythology here.
I'm guessing the Z is Zeus.
So Shazam stands for it's where he's getting his powers. So it's the wisdom of Solomon.
Okay.
The strength of Hercules.
Okay.
The stamina of Atlas.
Okay.
The power of Zeus.
All right.
The courage of Achilles.
Okay.
And the speed of Mercury.
I like it.
So Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, Mercury, Shazam.
I have a question.
Yes.
When did this come about? Did the name come first and then they retconned it and said, like, but hey guys, wouldn't it be cool if it stood for...
Oh, no. It was right off the bat. It was right off the bat. Again, sure. Shazam wasn't his name. Shazam's what he called.
Yeah.
So it was the way he got his power. When Billy Batson would yell Shazam, that was the power of the gods.
To me, it sounds like something like people were sitting in a room and they were like, what would be a really cool word for
it was totally,
And then they're like, that's great. We can't just, there needs to be a reason, though.
No, it was totally the people just coming up with the idea and trying to, we got to find some cool word that he can yell. And, that's 100%. Yeah. But again, unlike Thor or Wonder Woman, even though you gave Wonder Woman a little bit of that, but she is a demigod. Mm-hmm. Billy Batson is just human. In fact, he's a kid.
Right.
And he channels the gods. So, but again, it's not Greek mythology. It's not Roman mythology. It's a hodgepodge
Yes.
of mythology. Do you think combining multiple mythologies strengthens the concept, or do you think that kind of dilutes, ruins the mythology a little bit?
I think it strengthens it to an extent. Like it's just storytelling. And what is storytelling but just a hodgepodge of all these different pre-existing things brought together to make something new?
Yeah. So would you say that Shazam is more mythological than characters that are tied to just a single?
Well, I mean, with a word, I'm trying not to say name because you don't like that they call him Shazam now.
I get it though.
But like,
it is what it is.
But like with a word like Shazam that brings it all together.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty nail on the head.
All right, well, let's move on to other mythologies. Most recently, we have discussed here on Moving Panels Moon Knight.
Yes.
Who is connected to Egyptian mythology.
Which I'm not as familiar with.
Oh, I'm not either. What I learned from researching Moon Knight's about all I know. But of course, he's Mark Spector, Moon Knight, is tied to Khonshu, who is the Egyptian god of the moon. And as we see in the show, he also is kind of associated with the passage of time. He is the vengeance or justice god. He is the protector of travelers in the night. Khonshu, to my knowledge, isn't always defined clearly. And I've apparently that's the case for a lot of Egyptian gods. They're kind of layered. They kind of shift their role and position. It's not as clear as Greek and Roman mythology is. But we have Mark as Khonshu's avatar. We have a little bit of ambiguity in whether or not Khonshu is actually a real god or a fractured part of Mark's mind. I think the show pretty much established he is real. But we get those themes of judgment.
Right.
Of vengeance, I guess I should say. Tying into that with Batman, justice, tying in that a Superman type character. So how do you think the Egyptian mythology, the tone, I should say, of the Egyptian mythology maybe differs from that of Greek, Roman, Norse? Do you think that it is something that they can maybe tiptoe around a little bit more because they don't think they like we're saying people don't know it as well as they know Greek and Norse?
I think that's a big part of it. Just because like we've all just as a society been obsessed with Egypt. And I think it's because it is not as well known, because their language isn't as easy to translate. Like they are prolific in their writing, but their writing is hard to find. And we've translated some of it, but not all of it. And there are things that we interpret that might not have been right. And so we don't have as strong a history connected to Egypt as we do to like the Roman gods, because the Romans were so prolific, and for centuries we studied Latin and Roman writings because we determined that was the language of knowledge.
Yeah.
And so it has been studied deeper. When it comes to Egyptian mythology and Egyptian history, like we know what mummies are. Yeah. And we know hieroglyphics and pharaohs and things like that. A lot of surface level information.
Yeah. And we knew they had gods.
We knew they had gods. We know Ra. And that's about it. But like
Anubis.
Thank you so much. But
we've seen the mummy.
We've all seen the mummy. But like it's just not something that's as ingrained in our culture as Roman mythology. And so they're able to say like, oh yeah, no, it's this.
Yeah.
When it could be, but also it could very well not be. And most people aren't going to know.
And another example of that is my next character, Black Panther.
Yeah.
So, of course, this African mythology, which is connected to Egyptian mythology, because Egypt is in Africa.
Right.
And so Black Panther, the Wakandan panther god is Bast, or Bastet in Egyptian mythology. But in actual mythology, Bast is a goddess, and she is associated with protection, fertility, with home. So that makes sense, because it's always about protecting Wakanda. And she is often depicted as some sort of cat type creature, a lioness, feline type character. But in Marvel, Bast is reinterpreted as this panther god of Wakanda. And T'Challa gains his abilities through the heart-shaped herb, which connects him to Bast. And of course, we got the ancestral plane, where all the past Black Panthers reside. And this becomes, in the comics, a very rich mythological system, because it blends real-world inspiration with this fictional culture of Wakanda, this fictional universe. But it treats the spirituality as a central identity to its characters. What do you think the importance of having that cultural representation in a myth-based story is for a character like Black Panther? Like, what stands out about how Black Panther handles mythology in its own way?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, the comic book Black Panther kind of came about during, like, the civil rights movement. That's correct, yes?
Yes.
And kind of along with the resurgence of the Black Panther movement. Is that right?
So yeah, he was created in the later half of the 60s.
Okay. So that was around the time, like I said, the civil rights movement, where the African American community was taking a stand and trying to take ownership of their heritage and trying to reclaim a history that was stolen from them. And I do feel like there is an importance to having a deep, rich history that is founded in community and just generations, that isn't based in trauma. It's based in empowerment. And so I think that's my answer to the question, is I feel like it kind of comes from that, of just like, it's a reclaiming, re-empowerment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. And, I think also the idea that Wakanda is this, almost essentially this Mount Olympus of the Marvel world. Like, it's this magical, high society a world. I think I like the adaptation of that. Another adaptation that I had to bring up is, of course, Aquaman.
Yes.
So a character people don't always immediately associate with mythology, but I mean, why not? He's almost Poseidon.
Right. He's basically Poseidon.
He's the king of Atlantis. And
yeah.
So there's those, the writings of Plato. And so we get the connection to Atlantis, another, technological advanced society. And of course we get the connection that he has with Poseidon, Neptune, whichever you want to go there. I mean, essentially he is a king of a mythological world, kind of like T'Challa is for Wakanda. And again, just like with T'Challa, Arthur, Aquaman, helps to bridge those two civilizations together. This almost magical realm to the Earth.
Right.
So, but why do you think Aquaman, of all of probably these characters I've just named, why do you think his mythological roots sometimes get kind of forgotten or overlooked?
Because Aquaman feels silly. I'm sorry. Like, I am, of all the superheroes mentioned so far, Aquaman's probably the one I know the least about. And that's just, I haven't seen his movies. I don't read his comics.
No.
Like I know he lives underwater.
But so does SpongeBob.
But so does
yeah.
SpongeBob. But so I feel like he's not connected as much because he's not known as well.
Yeah.
And for so long, I'm leaving the Jason Momoa movies out of it, but for so long,
Yeah, Aquaman was a joke.
Aquaman's been silly. Like there was that whole run in Big Bang Theory where they were all dressing up as superheroes and nobody wanted to be Aquaman because Aquaman's kind of silly. Yeah. Now Jason Momoa has brought some gravitas to that character, which is great.
Well, when they've done it, animated the Justice League animated TV show, made him a kind of a bigger character, kind of gave him a little bit more stout.
Yeah. But when there's a character that I think a lot of people just kind of don't think too much about, they're not going to think about how it might be tied to deeper literary themes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on from the obvious characters that are tied to mythology, and let's talk about the characters that you would say are influenced. Yeah. Because I think that's where comic books and mythology gets a little bit more fascinating, because even superheroes with no explicit connection to specific gods or ancient stories, they still have a mythological foundation. And I have to just go ahead and say Superman.
I was waiting for you to bring him up.
Yeah, well, again, he doesn't have the direct tie.
No.
But Jerry Siegel, one of Superman's creators, he did once say in an interview that he wanted to create a character that was like, quote, Samson, Hercules, and all the strong men I ever heard tell of rolled into one.
I mean, there you go. Right there. That's...
And,
Superman's a good...
Yeah.
Inspired by... Like, yes, no, he's not directly Hercules, although he has similarities.
Yeah.
He's strong.
Yeah,
he is of another world.
Yeah.
He...
He's the chosen child that was sent away.
Yeah.
So, well, but I'm not. But that's Perseus.
Yes. Okay.
You got the connection to Perseus there.
I thought we were going to try to connect it to the Hercules
cartoon,
and I was like,
no. That's the strong man archetype.
Okay.
Which also, people have always joked. Superman created the whole, wearing the underwear outside and all that. But if you go back and look at strong men from like the circus, that's how they dressed.
Exactly.
And that was kind of the idea. I mean, you think back to probably some images you've seen of Hercules and Samson, like they're probably not wearing a shirt and they've got this like loincloth looking type garment. But yeah, so we've got the strongman archetype of Hercules, Samson. We've got the chosen child sent away like Perseus or Moses.
Right.
And we get this broader mythological idea of he is the moral ideal. Like he's a figure who represents what humanity could be.
Right. And,
he, like you said, he's sent away from a dying world. He's raised by humble people. He is destined for greatness. And to me, that's not science fiction. That's mythology using science fiction language.
Yes.
Using a science fiction world. So when you look at Superman, do you see him more as a mythological character or as a science fiction character?
Oh, definitely mythological. Like he is described in stories as godlike. Like he is literally just the embodiment of an immortal with super strength he's not all knowing, but he is like...
And he admits to his flaws.
Yes, but he knows what the right thing is.
Yes.
And he makes the choice to do the right thing. And that is a person you can look up to and not so much the Roman gods, who are not people you want to look up to. They're people you fear and are afraid of. But like more the current modern day depictions of God.
Yeah.
Of just that, like, that is the being we should gravitate towards and work towards being like.
Yeah, and I think, with Superman and with a lot of other characters, we follow stories that fit, and Justin Baker has talked about this on the show before, that what's fit and what we call the hero's journey.
Yeah.
This structure identified by Joseph Campbell, that includes it's a call. You face the trials and the challenges. There's death and rebirth, which again, talk about Superman. There is the return of something greater.
Right.
And not just in Superman, we've seen that with Batman.
Yeah.
With Bruce Wayne going through the death of his parents, and then the character of Batman being kind of his rebirth, more symbolic than literal. Yeah. Same thing with Spider-Man. With Uncle Ben and him learning responsibility through loss. But you even got characters like the X-Men, who struggle with identity and belonging. And these aren't just the structures of a story. There's not just plot points. Like, these are mythological frameworks.
Narrative elements.
And it's the same things that we've seen, passed down from century to century to century. Do you, I know I just named quite a few, but do you have an example of a hero's journey in, I'll just say, modern media? Like, we can break away from comics for a minute. Like, do you have a favorite example of someone with the hero's journey in modern media?
Well, Laramy, it's so funny you should ask that, and I think you know where I'm going with this.
I think I do, based off your face.
So Laramy and I have recently, I discovered it, and now Laramy has read the first book. We are reading this series called Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yes.
And it is about this man, and the planet Earth has been taken over by aliens, and all surviving humans were given a choice to either stay on Earth and die, or travel to this dungeon under the earth.
Participate in a live video game.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he has to basically lose who he was and work towards a different version of himself. And he's actively, working towards surviving, but also rebelling a little bit. Like, he's severely underestimated when he initially enters the dungeon. And one of the things, the first boss battle he is in, it's noted, we can tell you're not going to be one who goes through this thing the way we expect you to. And he's actively fighting. He's learning lessons. He's making choices, hard choices. At the very beginning, he meets this group of people from a nursing home, and he's stuck in this weird thing of if I'm helping these people, am I actually helping them, or am I torturing them longer?
Yeah, because eventually they're going to die.
They're going to die.
Yeah.
These people do
that's
not
the whole
have
point of the game.
Yeah, these people don't have the mental or physical capacity to survive this world. Is helping them make it through it, helping them.
Yeah.
And that's just the stuff that he has to work through as the series progresses. And so, that's my current modern example.
Yeah.
It's fresh on the brain.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. And that's the thing. You get a lot of it in just, not just comic books. A lot of it in just modern literature. You can even go through, the Hunger Games.
Right.
And there's a lot of that
Hunger
mythology, a lot of that connection, a lot of that.
That Throne of Glass series that I read, very reminiscent of the hero's journey.
But bottom line is, mythology is built on archetypes.
Right.
And honestly, so are comic books.
Yeah.
You've got the quote-unquote god.
Yeah.
Not just Thor, Superman.
Right.
Superman's considered a god. You've got the warrior. Not just Wonder Woman, who's considered Captain America. We've already talked about, you've got the King, Black Panther, Aquaman. You could even go into characters like Batman, who's kind of the king of Gotham in his way. He's the protector and the ruler. Then you've got like the trickster.
Mm-hmm.
You get Loki, obviously, the Joker, Deadpool.
Yeah.
Falls into that. You've got the outcast or the outsider in characters like the Hulk and Wolverine. You've got, as some of the stories we've talked about, you've got the orphan.
Yeah.
Which, Batman, Robin, Spider-Man, there's so many characters you can fit into those. I mean, these are the archetypes that resonate because they represent human experiences.
Yeah.
We don't watch or read these characters. We recognize these characters. We empathize with these characters. Is there an archetype that you connect with more so probably than any?
I guess, I don't know if there's one in particular that I resonate with.
Well, do you think that there's an archetype maybe that shows up more in certain mythologies?
I mean, you've always got
I would think the warrior.
The warrior is a good one.
You got your hero.
Yeah. I'm always thinking of like the morally
centered.
The morally centered person who has to move through and make hard decisions and choose hope over the easy choices.
Yeah.
And you get that with a lot of superhero characters. Like, you get that with Superman at times. You get that with Wonder Woman, and you get Spider-Man, things like that. Like, you have those characters who know what is right, and but they have to choose that action. Yeah. You're Steve Rogers.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting is that while these characters are essentially the archetypes, the settings, of course, are changing. Instead of temples, we get just cities.
Right.
Instead of having to battle the gods, it's sometimes having to battle extraterrestrial life.
Right.
But as you're saying, bottom line is the emotional stakes are still the same. We're still asking, what does it mean to have power, to be powerful? Yeah. What does it mean to be good? What
are your obligations when you have those
what do
powers?
we owe to each other? Like, those are the questions that mythology have always asked, and superheroes are just giving us a new way to explore them. So what if comic books aren't just, though, inspired by mythology? What if they are our
modern day mythology?
Yeah. So just like mythology did, and you've talked about, they explained the unexplainable.
Yeah.
They taught moral lessons.
Yeah.
They gave people figures to admire. They gave us people to fear. They gave us people to question.
Absolutely. I think a big example to hold that up is this newest Superman movie that came out. Is you have this guy who is, viewed as this god, but he is torn down.
Yeah.
And he is looked at as beneath people because he makes big decisions without asking questions. He made a big decision.
Yeah, to the story, yes.
In the story. And now he is hated by the social media types. And he still knows that what he did was right.
Yeah.
And that maybe the decision he made wasn't the best politically, but he stands by it.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's teaching us as a society, who should we trust? Should we trust the internet? Because you find out that the majority of the hate he's getting on the internet are literal bots that are being, or not literal, they're monkeys.
Not literal because they're monkeys, yeah.
Literal monkeys that have been brainwashed into writing out these awful things and basically spamming the internet with hate towards him to turn public opinion. And the person we should be looking at and questioning is this person who's trying to play it off like this savior, who's trying to save us from this evil Superman, who's literally just a billionaire trying to take over the world.
Yeah. And I think that's where it is. I mean, mythology, the people of ancient Greece, of Rome, of the Nordic lands and all that, they knew the stories of their gods. They knew the stories of Zeus. They knew the stories of Hercules. They were passed down from generation to generation. And today, comic book fan or not, you know the story of Superman.
You do.
You know the story of Batman. You know the story of Spider-Man. I guess now with the MCU, probably more people know the story of the Avengers.
Right.
And we now have stories that we, just like they did with mythology, we debate those stories. We reinterpret those stories. We retell the stories. And changes happen as we retell them through the years. Because you go back to Superman in 1938, and here we are approaching 100 years later, and it's just like mythology. Do you think we are already treating comics the way mythology was, what we call mythology? Because it wasn't mythology.
Yeah, it was just
their way of life. It was just
mythology.
Yeah. Do you think we're already treating them that way, or do you think this will be something that, thousands of years later, someone's going to be looking back on this as the mythology of the 20th and 21st century?
I think there's a possibility. I mean, it's definitely different in that, like, we were like Romans and Greeks and the Norse people and the Egyptians were called to worship and fear and believe that these stories were true when they were being told. Whereas, like, we all know the story of Superman is not real. We are just telling these stories. And so I think
so there's
like
a little
it's
different.
it's more of a literature, like the story is.
So maybe we don't today.
Yeah.
But do you think, like I said, thousands of years, if there is, people who look back and maybe they think that we thought it was all real?
I mean, there's always that possibility. Because, it's possible.
And they look upon comics as the ancient texts.
Texts.
Yeah. And and that we have, and the action figures as little idols to the gods.
They'll stumble upon this room that we're sitting in right now, and they will think this is a high holy temple.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, as we've talked about, mythology, as you said, it helped people process things. Natural disasters. What causes what's the reason behind natural disasters? Death. The way just humans behaved. And I think comic books have done something similar. We've got stories of identity, like the X-Men as an allegory to that. We've got responsibility, like Superman and Spider-Man, and even Batman have told. We've got the stories of power and corruption, like almost every villain has given us. And they don't explain they don't explain lightning as God's anger, as a God's anger, but they do help us understand ourselves.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest similarities is that emotional investment. Yeah. Yes, we may not believe it's real, but I think that we do connect on that emotional level. Because people didn't just hear the myths and believe them, they connected to them, and that is what made them want to pass those stories along. And we do the same thing. I did it for you. You weren't as big into this stuff before we met. We do it with our daughters. We introduce the characters. We get them to know the characters. Then we've got things like what we're doing on this show, on moving panels in general. We argue about the interpretations and what certain things mean. We care deeply about these fictional people. And that is the behavior of mythology. But I think at the core of everything we've talked about, there is one simple truth, that these stories matter because they help us understand what it means to be human.
Right.
Mythology gave those civilizations a sense of order, a way to process fear and hope, and a connection to something bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And I think comic books do the same thing. They give us heroes that we can aspire to. They give us villains to challenge, and even sometimes make us challenge our own beliefs. They give us stories that help us process our own lives. We see ourselves in these characters through struggles and doubts and hopes, and whether it's a god on a mountain, a hero under a mask, or with a cape, the goal I think is the same, and that's to make sense of who we are.
Right. Because that's the scary thing.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who we are.
Yeah, because I don't think mythology, as we're defining the word, has disappeared.
No.
I think it's just evolved. It's moved from oral tradition, just telling the stories, to then written stories. And again, I'm not just talking comic books here. I'm talking about other literature. But of course, it moved into comics and that visual media. It's moved into television and movies. It just changes its medium.
Right.
But it still serves the same purpose.
Yeah.
So I know we've kind of we've talked about this throughout the whole show, but why do you think that people personally connect with mythology, just as a broad sense? And do you think that these stories will outlast us the way that ancient myths have?
Well, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier of it helps us make sense of things that we can't understand. Like, it helps us make sense of a corrupt government. It helps us make sense of, struggling with trauma, like something has happened and we've moved on from it physically. Like, time has passed and we are no longer in that trauma, but maybe someone is still struggling with it. And then to get to see a character go through those same things, like being able to then understand it and go like, oh, well, maybe that's what's going on with me. It helps you see the emotional struggles that you may have, make sense of it, and realize that it's not necessarily a weakness. It is part of what makes you you, and you can still move forward with strength despite that. Like, being depressed doesn't make you weak. Being depressed doesn't mean you don't make a difference in the world. It just means that you're depressed.
Yeah.
And that with help, you can get through it and continue to be strength in the world. And love and light and a force for good and truth, justice in the American way.
Well, yeah.
But like, I think that's extremely powerful.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's truth, justice, and I believe it's actually truth, justice, and peace, because it is actually the core belief of the Jewish faith.
Oh.
Which is where that phrase came from, because of course Superman was created by two Jewish men.
Yeah.
And so that again, I don't want to cross mythology with religion too much, but that again, it's kind of that same idea. What we call mythology was at one point someone's religion. So yeah, but this was, I knew this would be a good conversation with you. As soon as I knew I wanted to do the mythology episode, I knew I wanted to talk it over with you. And so thank you for this conversation.
And thank you for asking me to talk nerd stuff with you.
And thanks everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. We're moving into the month of May, so we've got our animation month coming, and we're gonna actually keep into the mythology because we're moving into Hulk versus. So you've got a lot of Thor and in that. But let me give you my closing thoughts here. There's something timeless about these stories, whether it's a god wielding thunder, a king ruling beneath the sea, or a hero swinging through the streets of New York. We keep coming back to the same ideas: power, purpose, identity, sacrifice, because mythology never really went away. It just found a new way to be told. For today, from Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.